Carl here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it's Halloween 2024 content. Taking those beautiful nostalgia goggles off and reflecting on childhood horror, you know what it is. I'm looking at 31 films this month that basically left an indelible mark on my psyche as a child. I watched these films far too young, and now I'm going to reflect on them as an adult, rewatching them in almost every case. Rewatching them, there's one or two that I've seen so often I don't need to rewatch. Rewatching them, seeing if they hold up, and basically talking to you about what it was as a child that left the mark on me and how that kind of translates now overall. It's not so much a review. I don't want to do reviews, as I said in the very first episode of this. I just want to kind of spitball with no script, so it's obviously it's quite all over the place and a bit incoherent. But hey, when you're talking about, say, this film and the franchise around it, it makes a lot of sense. It is, of course, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, the first film isn't a mess. Like, it tells its story smartly from beginning, middle, and end. But obviously, there's so much detail around it, mysterious detail, that the rest of the franchise would later try to fill in. It is what I would call an absolute mess now. This is obviously an iconic horror movie. When we think of iconic franchises, we think of Halloween, we think of Friday the 13th, and we think of A Nightmare on Elm Street. And almost put them on the same level, because the majority of their films, or a lot of their films, would come out in the 80s and run throughout that particular period, although Halloween obviously started in the late 70s. So what is it? Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Halloween 1978 and Friday the 13th 1981 or 80 or 81, I can't quite remember, but they're all, you know, within that period of time. But a lot of the major players in the franchise would happen throughout the 80s. Of course, they were spitting them out because they were successful and stuff like that. When I was growing up, this was of those three franchises, this was the franchise that I saw the most. And I think part of the reason is because either they were easily available. I remember a lot of these on VHS, but also because obviously the tone of these films just get lighter and lighter and lighter as they go on. And every film I've got a different opinion on than I perhaps did as a child. I remember, for example, hating Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 when I was a kid. Now I massively appreciate it for all its gay reasons, but also for it being quite a clever horror movie as well. I was a big fan of the third film, and I still am. It is arguably the best, or at least the second best. I think second best personally. 4, 5, and 6 I saw a handful of times, but I didn't watch them that often growing up either, compared to, say, how I've seen them now. They're a mess, you know they are, they're all over the place. Freddy's Dead, of course, that was terrible as a kid. I still think it's terrible now. And that was about it, yeah, because New Nightmare was when I was a teenager and into that kind of period, so we're going far ahead. But the first film, I saw a ton. I probably watched it more times than any other first entry in these franchises, the Friday the 13th or the Halloween one overall. Which is odd, really, because I would still rank Halloween as a better film of all the firsts. Halloween is the far superior one. But maybe I think this because Nightmare on Elm Street was just so much, maybe as a child it was less boring. I don't think Halloween's boring, but I acknowledge that as a youngster I probably wasn't as engaged with the sort of slow pacing and methodical sort of storytelling of that film, whereas Nightmare on Elm Street always had a bit of energy to it. It always felt like something was going on. There's so much about it that kind of attracted me to it. I love the concept of dreams, killer in your dreams, and what that is, because particularly I would as well later in my teenage years kind of get fascinated with dreams, really start to take a lot from them. I became one of those people buying into what dreams meant and elements like that. Eventually I hit a point where I went, this is all nonsense, and stopped. I still think that now. Hey, if you do, more power to you, it's just not for me. But I did have a period in my life where I went through that. And I think it stems from a childhood fascination as well, because of the vividness of what dreams could be, you know? Whether you're having nightmares. And now I just recognise that what you've done throughout the day, what you've experienced, and your imagination just creates these vivid imagery. And sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's comforting, sometimes it's sexy, sometimes it's this, that, whatever, you name it. It's all these different things. But the idea of it being so horrible, so horrifying, you could die in it. And maybe when I was younger, I don't remember, I read maybe a news article or a book or something that described an actual event like that happening in real life, or a suspected event, like where someone had such a nightmare where they had a heart attack and died. And I thought, man, that's the connection and stuff like that. And it makes this film more real, which is really odd, because when you watch it, it's really very not based in reality at all. Now, of course, the American side of things I couldn't relate to, because I'm an Irish boy living in Ireland up to a certain point, and then coming to England and living in from a low-income family. I could not relate to these big suburban houses and the schools they go to and all of this stuff, not in the slightest. But the fact that, you know, like young adults and just trying to like navigate their way through life, it was all that's what felt real. But the rest of it is just so fucking surreal that you can almost argue the entire film feels like one big dream. That's something I think I reflect on more these days than I did back then. But certainly that style and the sort of haziness around the edge, although there obviously isn't a visual haziness, it felt like that was there. Chucking into that, then of course the fact that it leads to nightmarish situations, and the fact that a nightmare might occur within your own home, your own room, and how that plays out, that just spoke to me. It wasn't so much about Fred Krueger, because of course Freddy isn't actually in the original film that much at all, and he's certainly not the wisecracker he will be later on. I do sometimes wonder, and I think a lot of people do, is they kind of attach what he became later on to this first film. He wasn't. He was a horror movie demon on screen or in the film for a very short amount of time, and more of as a level of presence throughout. That I find fascinating. But I also think I really love the fact that this film turns adventurous at certain stages. For example, later on when she starts to fight back and drag him out of her dream, Nancy, this is of course Heather Langenkamp, and beats him up and all of that. That was fascinating. But I think what it was mainly as a child, and what I took into this and what it left scars, is the moments of this movie. So rather than the overall thing, it's specific moments. So it is of course Tina dying in her bed. Specifically, the shot of where her chest gets slashed open. Now, I think it looks really fake, but that was incredible. The reaching out the arm, still one of the greatest deaths in horror, and certainly in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The extended arms down the alleyway, silly as fuck now, but back then, like the visual and how it looks, and the fact that, oh my god, this is a dream, anything can happen, feel of it. The burning of Marge in the bed, that scene is phenomenal. What a scene that is, and that music, that fucking score enhances everything. Of course, the ending, the final scene where, like, oh, he's not dead, and the car hood slams down, and the Marge gets dragged through the window, where again now when you watch it, it's so obviously a dummy, but goddamn, what a terrifying prospect. You really couldn't win, or you couldn't banish something that lived within your dreams. As long as you dreamt he would always be there, that was terrifying. That was incredible stuff. Got to talk about it now, and it's just like, this is the shit that really makes this movie special. It is a movie of moments. I don't necessarily think it's necessarily the best well acted, or got the most great gore, or even the best story overall, but those moments are the moments that stand out. Incredibly shot, incredibly clever, really interesting. I mean, I haven't mentioned it because it didn't have as much of an effect on me, which is weird considering it. I think I didn't have much effect on me because it's so egregious, which of course is the character of Glenn, Johnny Depp's one getting sucked into the bed. It's one of the most iconic deaths in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, but I think even as a youngster, I recognised the over-the-top nature of that. Now I watch it, I'm like, God, that's incredible. Isn't that incredible? Like, just how they did it and the effect and all of that. And what clever imaginations. I actually find now more horrifying the parents' response to it when they open the door, because you don't really see it. It's just the dripping, and then it flashes over, and it's just like, I don't know, like a whirlpool up above. It's fast. It is fantastic, but that one really didn't have. It's the ones I think, it's the ones that disturbed me as a child that were more real. Because everything about this film was so surreal that I could almost detach myself from that and see it as a dream, even though the dream idea was terrifying. But the ones that felt more real, in the Tina death, for example, my God. And even just burning to death in your bed, because of course that is blamed on a lit cigarette, and that is something that could very, very well happen. It's happened to people all around the world. This is the stuff that mattered. It holds up as a film. I think it's a great film. I still think it's the best in the franchise, but as a scary kind of thing as a child, maybe not as much. Aside from, I think, the reality and the terror and the horror of the Tina thing. In fact, that entire sequence is inappropriate because, of course, it's sex beforehand. Well, nothing particularly visual. It's more sound than anything else. And obviously, but the kind of slashing and the murder is just so real and so visceral. I think that's your section there that really, really horrifies more than anything else. So Nightmare on Elm Street, what do you reckon? You got any thoughts on this one? You know what to do. Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at gbhbl. Just search for gbhbl and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.